In February of 1347, the servants found Lord Edmund's corpse in his own bedchamber at Dover Castle. Not from assassination, not from illness. He died of cold. Right inside his luxurious room, forget Game of Thrones, forget Hollywood scenes with massive fireplaces, blazing torches, and thick fur carpets.
It's
Real
so
medieval
cold in
castles,
here.
they were giant stone
I
refrigerators where
know.
people shivered even in summer.
I can't
Shocking
feel my
truth. The
fingers.
temperature inside a castle rarely rose above 10 degrees Celsius. Your breath turned to mist right in the bedroom. 1 meter thick stone walls didn't keep warmth, they only kept the cold. Wind slipped through every gap, stone floors were icy, and death by cold was common, especially among children and the elderly. No central heating, no electric blankets, not even a place to complain. So how did they survive? It turns out medieval people had 10 disaster survival techniques that we've forgotten. These methods worked perfectly without electricity, without gas, without modern technology. Some sound strange, some are pure genius. And method number 10, it could heat an entire 300 square meter room with just a single source of fire. Let's explore how these people turned freezing stone fortresses into livable spaces and why these secrets could still save your life today. The first method they thought of, making heat able to move. Imagine a fireplace you could carry anywhere. No chimney, no installation. That was the brazier, the #1 heating weapon of medieval people. A brazier was a metal cage filled with glowing charcoal, made from iron or bronze, with tall legs to protect wooden floors. Its slatted walls allowed heat to spread evenly. The lid helped control the intensity of the fire. Sizes varied, small handheld types, medium tabletop versions, and large ones that could heat a 20 square meter room for 4-6 hours. But here's what the movies never say. A brazier could kill you. Carbon monoxide, colorless, odorless, was a silent killer. In 1356, a noble family in Burgundy died right on their beds. No violence, just a smoldering brazier in the corner of the room. They died in their sleep. That was the price of warmth. Even so, the brazier became a symbol of luxury. Wealthy families commissioned intricately carved pieces with patterns and family crests. Medieval Instagram would have been full of numbered brazier goals. The principle still exists today. Japanese hibachi, Korean charcoal braziers, and preppers still rely on braziers during power outages. But the brazier had one major problem. It was expensive and dangerous. Not everyone could afford forged iron, and nobody wanted to suffocate in their sleep, so ordinary people found a much simpler solution. If the brazier was high-tech, then hot stones were the folk remedy, simple, effective, and doable by anyone. A 2-3 kilogram brick heated for 2-3 hours could retain warmth for 6-8 hours, raising the bed temperature by 15-20 degrees Celsius. But not every stone could be used. People chose smooth river stones with no cracks. Why? Stones with hidden fractures could explode like grenades when heated. Shards could cause severe burns, even death. Choosing the right stone was an art. Experienced servants knew which ones were safe, how long to heat them, and what cloth to wrap them in. They often used thick wool, sheepskin, or special leather pouches. An hour before bedtime, servants placed the stones into the hearth. When hot enough, they wrapped them carefully and set them into the bed, turning an icy mattress into a warm nest. Proof? At Warwick Castle in England, archaeologists found special recesses in the fireplace for heating stones, along with remnants of thick wool fabric. People even invented foot warmers, wooden boxes with holes for hot stones. Scribes and monks rested their feet on them for hours. Noble women strung small stones into necklaces like warmth amulets. A joke of the time, hot potato wasn't a game, it was survival. This method still works today when camping. Hot stones solved the cold bed problem, but the bed was only part of the story. How do you stay warm through an entire night in a room where the temperature could drop below freezing? Medieval people
bed
found
will
the
be
answer in the
warm
human body
soon.
itself. Forget having your own room. Forget the idea of personal space. To survive a medieval winter night, you needed people. A lot of people. 6 to 8 people sharing one bed wasn't poverty, it was survival science. A resting human body emits 100 watts of heat. 8 people equals 800 watts equals a modern electric heater. Free, automatic, all night. Beds back then were enormous. 4 meters wide at Conway Castle in Wales, big enough for 10-12 people. Mattresses stuffed with feathers, wool, and straw created insulation from the freezing stone floor. Sleeping positions were assigned like a military formation. Children between adults warmest, plus safest. Elders or the sick in the center, well protected. Strong. Young adults on the edges, living shields against drafts. On the coldest nights, even servants joined their masters in bed. The earl slept beside the stable boy. Why? The cold erased all class boundaries. Warmth mattered more than hierarchy. Thick wool curtains surrounding the bed created a house within a house, a microclimate that trapped body heat even when the room itself was as cold as a freezer. Sleeping with 7 strangers, one guy snoring like thunder, your cousin's foot in your face. Not pleasant, not recommended, but they survived, and that was what mattered. Of course, a warm bed only solved the 8 hours of night. What about the other 16 freezing hours of the day? That was when the second layer of protection appeared, not metal armor, but fabric. Medieval people understood a principle that modern mountaineering took centuries to rediscover. Warmth doesn't come from a thick layer of fabric, but from the air trapped between layers. 7 to 8 layers of clothing were the norm. Sounds crazy? It was pure science. First layer, a linen shirt, absorbed moisture, dried fast, and prevented body heat from escaping. Second layer, a thick wool garment. Wool created millions of tiny air pockets between its fibers, better insulation than fur because it trapped heat while staying breathable. Third layer, a wool or heavy felt cloak treated with animal fat to repel water, the medieval version of a waterproof outer shell. The wealthy added furs, beaver, marten, squirrel. Furs were worn with the hair facing inward, against the skin, for maximum warmth. Beaver fur was especially prized, warmer than sheep's wool, and a symbol of high status. At Edinburgh Castle, archaeologists found a 14th century woman's dress with 12 layers, linen undergarments, alternating thick and thin wool layers, and a fur-lined cloak. Fashion and survival blended perfectly. The head loses 40% of body heat, so hoods and fur caps stayed on at all times, even indoors. Leather boots lined with fur, coated with grease for waterproofing. Inside, multiple pairs of wool socks tied to the belt so they wouldn't slip. Hands wore double gloves, thin leather lined with fur inside, thick wool gloves outside. Women had an advantage. Long skirts created a heat tent around the legs, allowing multiple inner layers of wool petticoats. But there was a cost. Dressing took 2 hours. Going to the bathroom? A full adventure. Medieval Tinderbio enjoys long walks because wearing 25 kilos of clothing makes running impossible. But clothing only protected the body. How do you protect an entire room from ice-cold stone walls? Medieval people came up with a brilliant idea. If humans needed coats, then castles did too. Wall hangings weren't just art, they were a heating system. And modern science proves it. Thermal cameras today show that properly hung fabric can raise a room's temperature by 8–10 degrees Celsius. In a medieval castle, that was the difference between freezing and tolerable. Walls were covered with tapestries from floor to ceiling, a 3–4 centimeters layer of coarse wool underneath, decorative embroidered fabric on the outside. The gap between the cloth and the wall created an air pocket, the same principle as modern insulation materials. At Cluny Castle in France, 4 centimeters thick tapestries from that era still survive today. Windows were the biggest enemy of heat. Their 3-layer defense system. Wooden shutters on the inside, cowbladder membranes in the middle, thin but translucent, and thick wool or fur curtains on the outside. The effect was equal to modern double-glazed windows. At night, gaps were stuffed with felt or rags. Floors were covered with thick straw, a natural insulator that blocked cold rising from the stone beneath. On top, rugs and animal hides, bear, wolf, deer. The wealthy used expensive Persian carpets. The straw was replaced weekly to avoid insects and maintain cleanliness. Even doorways were draped with heavy cloth instead of wooden doors, easy to move, yet still heat-retaining. In large castles, these fabrics worked like thermal airlocks. Every autumn, castles held a winter dressing ritual. Servants hung tapestries, laid hides, and installed curtains. The castle put on its winter coat, preparing for the long, cold season. In spring, everything was taken down, cleaned, and stored in chests until the next year. Fabric inside the castle wasn't just luxury, It was a survival tool that turned stone halls into livable spaces. But fabric only insulated. It didn't create heat. They needed another living source of warmth and found it in a place no one expected. People and livestock living together wasn't a sign of poverty, it was intentional architecture. Dogs were especially valued. Large breeds like Newfoundlands, Mastiffs, and Shepherd dogs didn't just guard, they were heating dogs. Let a few big, thick-furred dogs curl up beside you on a winter night, and they could warm an entire family. People also believed a dog's breath could ward off evil spirits. Bonus protection, cats acted as living draft detectors. They always found the warmest spot in the house. Owners only had to watch where a cat chose to lie to know which wall or window was leaking wind. Sleeping with a few cats under a fur blanket was normal in Northern Europe. But the truly genius architecture was this. Livestock pens were built beneath the living quarters. Goats, sheep, and cattle stayed on the lower floor. Their body heat rose through wooden floors, with gaps, natural convection turning the stable into a living boiler. At Winchester Castle, traces of heat channel structures from the stables to the upper rooms still remain. The stable functioned like a natural furnace, warming the entire floor above. Your bedroom was over the stable. The smell? We don't talk about that. Even chickens, ducks, and geese lived inside or right next to the living space, providing eggs and radiating warmth. Goose feathers were especially prized, used to make the warmest blankets and pillows of the medieval era, a tradition that survives today. And here's a strange fact. Even mice were tolerated in winter. Chronicles note, the mice warm the walls. Medieval logic. Enemies become roommates at -10 degrees. Animals weren't just food or protection, they were part of the heating system. Castle architecture was designed to make use of the closeness between humans and their animals, an ancient and reliable way to stay warm. But all these methods warmed you from the outside. So what about igniting heat from inside the human body? Mulled wine, spiced hot wine, was not a drink. It was survival medicine. They drank it 3 times a day, in the morning to get the blood flowing, at noon to fight damp, cold, and at night before bed to relax the muscles in a freezing bed. The recipe, wine plus cinnamon plus cloves plus ginger plus honey. Spices weren't just for flavor. They truly boosted circulation, creating warmth from the inside out.
Didn't need
Beer and ale
gyms,
were
they
served
had
warm.
armor.
Cold drinks stole
This is
body heat.
called
Warm
Ringen
ones
am
maintained it.
Schwert,
Tavern
or
records mentioned
wrestling
boiled
in
ale.
armor.
A pot was always kept by the fire so customers could heat their cup quickly. Children drank diluted ale, low alcohol, safer than water, provided calorie. Herbal tonics infused in strong alcohol, pepper plus ginger plus pine plus mugwort. Sipped in small amounts to fight chills, joint pain, and winter depression. Monasteries had secret formulas, and the doses were passed down like trade secrets. A bedtime ritual common across Europe. 1 cup of warm wine to relax the body and help you fall asleep in a cold bed. Mornings began with a sip of warm ale to fuel the body before going out into the cold to work. A job title of the era, beverage warmer, the person who heated drinks for the master. Basically, a human microwave for alcohol. Daytime drinking wasn't a problem, it was the solution. Warm beverages reinforced the brazier, hot stones, clothing, and curtains. A complete heating system. Sitting still equals freezing to death. Simple as that. The mandatory morning ritual. Everyone from nobles to servants had to warm up the body the moment they woke. Squats, arm swings, running in place, brisk walking around the hall. The eldest person set the pace like a medieval morning exercise class. Purpose: fire up the blood, activate the muscles, prepare for long hours. Daily labor was an automatic heating system. Servants carried water from wells, hauled firewood from the yard, brought food up from the cellar. Women washed in cold water, spun yarn, cooked, cleaned.
Thank you,
Even
mistress.
tending charcoal fires required constant movement. Everything could freeze. Copying manuscripts wasn't safe for even an hour. Monastic rules required: stand every hour, stretch your neck, loosen your hands, rotate your torso. Surviving documents list prescribed exercises: wrist, rotations, opening and closing fists, twisting the torso. Nighttime dancing was both entertainment and heating. People dance carole, saltarello. Branle group dances more like cardio workouts than graceful steps. 1 hour of wild dancing equals 3 hours of warmth afterward, even in damp rooms. Night training continued through winter. Heavy armor, sword swings, running, grappling, everything pumped the blood. No gym needed when you swing an 18-kilogram sword. Children played games that kept them warm. Blind man's buff, tag, wrestling, rolling on the floor. They felt the cold less because their bodies were conditioned through constant active play. Movement wasn't just a habit, it was a basic survival strategy. Every step, every motion, every dance became a tiny furnace. And when the body was exhausted after a full day of movement, that was when the next internal process came into play. Iron rule: never eat cold food. Cold food equals cold body. Hot food equals warm body. Stews were always kept simmering. Porridge and broth stayed overnight inside the kitchen hearth. At dawn, they were ladled into bowls and handed out to everyone. Frumenty thick wheat porridge with milk, eggs, and spices was especially popular. One bowl could keep a person warm for nearly an entire day. The strategy centered around thick dishes, meat stews, and slow-cooked beans. The fattier, the better. Pork lard, butter, and fatty meat stayed warm inside the body for hours. Potage, a thick meat vegetable bean soup, and aioli, the pungent garlic broth, were especially used. Spices made you warm from the inside. Even bread was upgraded. Even bread had to be placed on the hearth and served warm. No one ate cold food in winter, that was thermal suicide. Spices played a crucial finishing role. Not just for flavor, they truly boosted blood circulation. Morning, ginger, cinnamon for stimulation. Noon, pepper, cloves for digestion and warmth. Evening, nutmeg, calming herbs for relaxation. Sleep. Winter cooking used spices without holding back. They were as valuable as gold. Garlic and onions were essential winter foods, eaten raw or stewed. A monastic kitchen chronicle states, in winter stew, garlic counts equal to meat. Hot pies were favorites filled with meat, vegetables, or grains, the pastry shell acting as a natural heat container. You could eat them while holding them for warmth.
Medieval
Sometimes
knights
hot
didn't
pies
need
were given to
gyms,
children
they had
or the elderly
armor.
to hold in their hands
This
until they
is
cooled.
called
Food in
ringen
a
am
medieval
Schwert,
castle didn't just
or
nourish it,
wrestling
protected
in
against the
armor.
cold. 3 hot meals plus warm drinks plus spices plus fatty foods equals an indispensable internal heating system. Imagine a furnace 4 meters wide, 2 meters tall, 1.5 meters deep, flames as tall as a person, burning 2-meter logs as thick as a human torso. That was the heart of a medieval castle. Modern reconstruction experiments show a properly built central hearth can heat a 300 square meter stone hall, one fire, and entire castle building. The secret lay in construction techniques, a foundation of dense heat-blocking stone, high-temperature fired brick walls, a chimney designed to pull smoke out slowly so the maximum amount of heat transferred into the walls before escaping. Some castles even had channels inside the walls to distribute heat to upper floors' primitive central heating systems. The fire burned continuously from October to April, 6 months without going out. Logs were added every 2-3 hours. At night, the firekeeper, the castle firefighter, stayed awake to ensure the flame never died, because as long as the fire burned, life continued. The stones around the hearth acted like thermal batteries, heated during the day, releasing warmth throughout the night. Even after the fire went out, the walls still radiated heat. The central hearth wasn't just a heat source, it was a social hub, a kitchen, a gathering place, a spiritual symbol.
Pie,
Everyone gravitated toward it. Everything revolved around it. Without the hearth, there was no life. Here is the final and most important
Careful
secret.
now,
One
it is
large
very
fire,
hot.
built correctly, could heat an
Thank
entire
you,
stone
mistress.
fortress. Medieval castles were truly freezing stone prisons. But people of that era didn't simply endure. They built an entire, sophisticated survival system. Braziers moved heat where it was needed. Hot stones turned beds into warm nests. Group sleeping created a human furnace. Layered clothing worked like mobile armor. Wall hangings insulated the castle like a coat. Animals radiated heat from below. Warm wine ignited fire from within. Constant movement generated body heat. Hot food became internal fuel. And the central hearth, its beating heart, held everything together. No method worked alone. The power was in the system 10 techniques working together to create life. Here is the greatest lesson. Heat is not something passive. It must be created, protected, and distributed. Medieval people understood. Systems thinking long before the concept existed. And here's the astonishing thing. These techniques still work today. Power outage, winter camping, Living off-grid? These methods kept millions alive for 1,000 years. They can still save you. Modern comfort has made us fragile. We complain when the heater breaks for 30 minutes. Medieval people would laugh at our softness if they weren't too busy surviving. But here's the extraordinary part. They didn't just survive, they thrived. In those icy fortresses, they built churches, wrote literature, created art, raised families, and built civilizations. They created beauty in the cold. If they could accomplish all that inside freezing castles, what excuses do we have? A question for you. Which method surprised you most? Which one do you think would actually work in an emergency? Have you ever had to keep warm without modern heating? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to know what you did to get through it. And here's the challenge. Could you survive a medieval winter night? No electricity, no gas. Just these 10 methods. Do you think you could manage it? If you found this post helpful, save it. One day, when the power goes out, when a blizzard hits, when the heating system dies, this knowledge could save your life or someone you love. Because history isn't just the past. Sometimes it's a survival handbook for the future. Share this with someone who needs it. Knowledge is power. And in this case, knowledge is warmth.